Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey has been, know that you are welcome here. We're hoping that everyone here has a chalice or a candle to light and something that you can light it with. Let's all light it together. And as I share some opening words, I'd invite everyone who has access to the chat to check in by typing your names. If you're a virtual visitor, also share in the chat where you're logging in from. These words are by the Reverend Mark Bellatini. This is our earth. It falls through heaven like a pearl in a glass of plum wine. There are no other earths that I know of. There are no other skies that we have mapped. This is our earth. The oneness who gave birth to it remains nameless. There was no midwife then to bring us word of the birth cry. We only rejoice that it is. This is our earth. Ice caps its head, glaciers clasp its feet. Warm wind like the breath of a lover breathes around its breast. Mountains thrust up to the clouds bringing joy. Storms blow across its shores bringing fear. Silvery fish capture sunlight and bring it down into the deep, as on shore valleys spread with ripening fruit. Cities teem with the poor and disenfranchised in the shadow of golden towers. Children live and also die. Highways throb, monks sit in silence, mothers work, crickets chirp, teachers plan, engineers design. Fathers write letters, people marry with and without the blessing of law. People cry. They laugh and brood and worry and wait. This is our earth. There are no other earths. Before its wonder, philosophers fall silent. Before its mystery, poets admit their words are shadow, not light. And all the great names religious teachers have left to us, Ishtar, Shekinah, Terra Mater, Suchness, Wakantanka, Gaia, suddenly refuse to announce themselves. And so we too fall silent, entering the time where words end and reality begins. I invite you to join now in singing our opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies, source of all to thee we raise this gentle thoughts and mild. Source of all to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Our reading today comes from an article called Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting by Julio Vincent Gambuto. Those of you who are part of a small group ministry, I've sent this article in its entirety out for you to discuss in one of your meetings. Pretty soon, as the country begins to figure out how to reopen and move forward, very powerful forces will try to convince us all to get back to normal. Billions of dollars will be spent on advertising, messaging, and media content to make you feel comfortable again. It will come in traditional forms, a billboard here, commercial there, and in new media forms like memes. In truth, you crave that feeling of normalcy. We want desperately to feel good again, to get back to the routines of life, to not lie in bed at night wondering how we're going to afford our rent and bills, to not wake up to an endless scroll of human tragedy on our phones, to just have our perfectly brewed cup of coffee and leave the house for work. The need for comfort will be real and it will be strong, and every brand in America will come to your rescue, dear consumer, to help take away that darkness and get life back to the way it was before the crisis. I urge you to be well aware of what is coming. What this trauma has shown us, though, cannot be unseen. A carless Los Angeles has clear blue skies. In a quiet New York, you can hear the birds chirp in the middle of Madison Avenue. Coyotes have been spotted on the Golden Gate Bridge. These are the postcard images of what the world might be like if we could find a way to have a less deadly daily effect on the planet. I hope you might consider this. What happened is incredible. It's the greatest gift ever unwrapped. Not the deaths, not the virus, of course, but the great pause. It is, in a word, profound. Please don't recoil from the bright light beaming through the window. I know it hurts your eyes. It hurts mine too. But the curtain is wide open. From one citizen to another, I implore you. Take a deep breath, ignore the deafening noise, and think deeply about what you want to put back into your life. This is our chance to define a new version of normal, a rare and truly sacred, yes, sacred opportunity to get rid of the noise and to only bring back what works for us, what makes our lives richer, what makes our kids happier, what makes us truly proud. We're going to sing together again now, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So I'll be honest with you, quarantine is getting old. I'm finding myself struggling day to day with irritation. And when I breathe into that irritation, what I find underneath it as its root cause are anxiety, anticipatory grief, actual grief for all of the things that are different than I had hoped or wanted. And it takes energy to make space for all of those feelings. And so, in addition to irritation, I'm experiencing quite a lot of fatigue. I'm tired a lot of the time. And when I read that we may be stuck in quarantine for 12 to 18 months, it makes me want to scream and tear my hair out. I hope I'm not alone. My saving grace in all of this has been my daily walks. I mean, I love Zoom and everything, but if I couldn't get out, if I couldn't have that fresh air, if I couldn't feel the wind and the sunshine on my face, if I couldn't visit all of my favorite wildflowers and see them blooming each in turn, um, I would be losing my mind. But I can. Even in these times, the earth is offering up this, what feels like love for our well being, for all this goodness and beauty for us to breathe in. And even here on the Palouse, I can see that Earth is rebounding and rebounding quickly as we are learning how to live without driving or flying. The Earth is bouncing back and it's having a huge impact. These stories of hope, of the air over LA being clean, um, they're for me, the fact that the earth is bouncing back so quickly means that in the future, when I have that sense of despair and powerlessness, when I think we're not going to make the changes we need to fast enough, I'll have this experience to remind me, nope, the earth is incredibly resilient and it will bounce back if we can just make these changes. Um, this week, of course, is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I'm wondering how many of the people on this Zoom worship are over 50, older than Earth Day. You know, when you start to think about the fact that it's really only been 50 years that the environmental movement has existed in this form, our awareness as a species has really progressed tremendously by leaps and bounds. And I think this great pause offers us a unique and precious time to reflect on next steps. I think we're being invited in this time to really engage in this beautiful reciprocal love of the earth. I've been reading a new book just put out about Buddhist activist Joanna Macy. Joanna Macy, along with David Corton and Riane Eisler and Thomas Berry, coined the term the Great Turning. I've talked about this before. Um, and the description, the Great Turning is a name for the essential adventure of our time, the shift from the industrial growth society to a life-sustaining civilization. There are three dimensions to the Great Turning. First, actions to slow damage to the earth. Second, analysis of the structural causes. For example, capitalism, the extraction economy, our dependence on fossil fuels. And then alongside that analysis, the creation of new structural alternatives like community care, sustainability, renewable energy. And then the third dimension of the Great Turning is a shift in consciousness from independence or rugged individualism to interdependence, an awareness that we are part of the earth, not separate from it. So you've heard me talk about Joanna's work before. She was my teacher in seminary. Her book, Active Hope, is one of the ones I pull off my shelf with some regularity. And the book I've been reading this week is a newly published retrospective of her life. It's called A Wild Love for the World. And in it, she reflects on, she and other people who have been influenced by her reflect on her five big ideas, the practices of mind and heart that we need to engage in order to be a part of the Great Turning. And those five big ideas are first, to develop a planetary sense of self. So just like we did in our meditation, to see ourselves as a smaller part of a greater interdependent web as opposed to individuals. The Buddhist term for this is called interbeing. We interbe with one another. The second big idea she calls sustaining the gaze, and this really has to do with the power of grief work, and it ties into our children's story. There's a tendency when we have these big complex problems like global climate change to turn away. We might feel despair, we might feel apathy. And Joanna says we have to keep turning toward um, the things that are happening and make space for the feelings that arise. She calls this the work that reconnects, as it reconnects us to our heart and enables us to keep going. And this work, there's a lot there about rituals. She does something called a truth mandala, where we give voice to fear and grief and anger, and then move through them to come back to hope. She also has a ritual called the Council of All Beings, in which we give voice to the non-human life on the planet. What would they say if they could speak? And Joanna believes, and I agree, that this work is work that needs to be done relationally in community. And if we do it on our own, it's helpful, but we have to be willing and able to do it together. The second big idea she offers us is something called dependent causality. This is a way of sort of systems theory meets Buddhism with a little chaos theory thrown in for good measure. Joanna points out that the changes that we make, both internal and external, all ripple through the world. Everything we do matters, she writes. Nothing is outside of the web of causality, and we are inherently empowered to be active agents in the web. Everything we do matters. Does that sound familiar to those of you from the UUCP? Her third big idea is something called deep time. She invites people to do a deep time walk. She takes a 1,000-meter rope and measures it out as if it were the 4.6 billion years that the Earth has existed. So some other activists have taken that and made it 4.6 kilometers for every footstep. For every footstep you take in this 4.6 kilometer walk, you're stepping 500,000 years through time. And of course, you get to the very, very, very end, and you see how quickly industrial society has damaged this beautiful planet and this beautiful complex set of ecosystems that have existed for so very long. There's actually an app for this. You can download a deep time walk app and do it anywhere and anytime. And it gives us an embodied sense of the Earth's age. The Great Pause is showing us how much impact we have in such a small time. And I think the deep time, the sense of deep time really addresses our own hubris. And then her next big idea is the step that we need to take up the work together. And she talks a lot about how taking up the work means embracing a sense of radical uncertainty. We do this not because we know it's going to help. We do this knowing it may not help, it may not make a difference, but because it's the right thing to do. She writes, liberated from the need for certainty and even hope, we can more fully inhabit the present moment. Not knowing rivets our attention on what is happening right now. The present moment is the only time we can act and the only time, after all, we can awaken. She reminds us that the power of interdependence, of this interbeing, and the resilience of the earth match the scope and the size of the challenges we are facing. And similarly, within us, human caring, courage, and longing for peace and harmony is at least as powerful a force as the fear and the greed that drive the consumer economy. So to bring it back to right here, right now, in the midst of this pandemic, here we are. We have clear evidence that the earth is more resilient than we dared hope. And within us, we have that sense of caring and courage and longing for a different way of being. And that caring, courage, and longing for a different way is at least as powerful as those feelings of anxiety, irritation, fear, and fatigue. So whether the restrictions are lifted in a matter of months or a matter of years, it is imperative that we resist the temptation to go back to normal. Because normal, business as usual, was killing our planet, this planet that we love with all our hearts and souls, with the fullness of our animal bodies, this planet that loves us in return. So let's get ready. Let's get ready by cultivating that sense of interdependence and interbeing, by making space for our difficult feelings, not just on our own, but with one another. Let's get ready by choosing to believe that what we do matters, by thinking in deep time and doing what we can here and now. For the love of the earth, for the love of one another, for the love of life. Let's promise that we will be ready to lean with every ounce of our will so that this great pause serves the great turning and our planet can have a future. So be it, and so may it be. So as we regather for our closing, I'm going to share a reading that I shared, actually our second virtual service together, because it just couldn't be more perfect for today. I actually have this posted in my bathroom by the sink, and I read it through every time I wash my hands. So I'm almost to the point where I know it by heart. This is Imagine by Lynn Unger. Imagine with me for a moment. Don't worry, I'm not saying it's real. Imagine, if you can, that there has been not a calamity, but a great awakening. Pretend just for a moment that we all so loved our threatened Earth that we stopped going on cruises, limited international flights, worked on cherishing the places where we already are. In this pretty fantasy, everyone who possibly can stops commuting, spends extra time with their kids or pets or garden. We have the revelation that everyone needs health care, sick leave, steady work. It occurs to us that healthcare workers are heroes, also teachers, not to mention the artists of all kinds who teach us resilience and joy. Imagine, if you will, that we turned to our neighbors in mutual aid, trading eggs for milk, checking in on those who are elderly or alone. Imagine that each of us felt suddenly called to wonder in this moment. What does the world, what does the earth need from me? What are my gifts? Yes, I know it's just a fantasy. The world could never change so radically overnight. But imagine. Let's sing together again. There is a love. So go forth then and know that part of the love that holds us is the earth itself, and offer it your love in return. Go in peace. Love you all. Stay sane. Get outside. See you next week.